Welcome to today's CIO Watercooler TV. My name's David Savage, and today I'm joined by Neil Briscoe, CTO at Cloud Gateway. How are you?
Very well. Yourself?
Yes, not too bad, thanks. CTO at Cloud Gateway, I'd imagine, well, CTO you immediately kind of have an idea of what a CTO is, but let's just find out what your responsibilities are within the business.
Anything tech related, responsible for the platform and the technology choices and the innovation of what Cloud Gateway does, which is a hybrid cloud connectivity platform.
Mainly inward looking or outward looking in terms of the people that you're dealing with?
Outward looking,
yeah.
Engaging with customers and finding what they want and actually the real crux of their issues and their wants and needs, and then turning that in-house and actually formulating the product and the strategy to actually implement those to deliver to customers.
So when we're talking about connectivity and networks, I suppose it's one of those things that up until the last couple of years, digital transformation has been held back, or the perception is that digital transformation has been held back by a number of things. Certainly with cloud, there's a huge amount of investment going on from companies that traditionally haven't really been in the technology sector, moving into that piece. I've always thought that it was more to do with the fact that cloud as an offering was maybe not seen as secure enough, or maybe it wasn't quite cost effective for those organizations, and now they're having to do that as a piece of safe innovation. But some of the blame does sometimes get labelled at connectivity at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that there's quite rightly, over the last few years and previous years before, is that network was always seen as a bit of the bottleneck. Is that because obviously network connectivity regarding the security, the design, and things take a long time. So we were seen as the bottleneck, and we had to gauge everyone. So we were seen as a bit of a blocker. But we've seen in recent years that doesn't really have to be the way that there's many methods of connectivity. And no longer we are seen as the people in the corner that basically stopping innovation and the migration to cloud.
I think that's fascinating, because without connectivity, all of the emerging technologies that we've had over the last 5-10 years wouldn't be possible. So it almost feels completely like a contradiction to say that networking is the blocker.
It is. There's not a great deal you can do without the network connectivity, and because it is quite costly, and the legacy environments that there were and legacy contracts were normally very, very long. You were tied in for quite a while, and the innovation, the agility to be able to move wasn't there previously. But yeah, networking is still not sexy, but it's absolutely required, and especially around the security and the agility is absolutely required. We're finding that the cloud innovations and technology moving to the large-scale public cloud providers, that networking's always been sort of slightly behind the curve, and we're still catching up. So they've gone off into the distance, and applications and potential cost savings are in there, and network is still trying to catch up so that we can move in at the same and innovate at the same pace as the other areas.
Do you think it's fair to label some of the blame in the way of the big networking businesses, the telcos, etc., for maybe going down the route of this being a utility? And I suppose a utility never does feel sexy. You don't think of water and gas and electricity as being
exactly.
sexy.
Networking should be sort of a commodity thing, but it's absolutely essential. You've got an application and a user, and without the network connectivity, you're not really going to be able to do that.
So in terms of the stuff that is coming out now that's changing perception,
yeah, there's more and more technology around there for the last few years, whether you believe the marketing hype or not. There's the SD-WAN technology, so there's the internet, using internet as WAN, internet as backbone. You can do the security well, you can do the reliability, and there's those sort of innovations. But then when specifically cloud connectivity, there's some not necessarily telcos able to do this, but layer 2 SDN providers where you can quickly, within 15 seconds, connect to Azure, connect to AWS, whereas typically in the olden days, we'll call it, in legacy, those could have taken 6 to 9 to 12 months to actually deliver, whereas there's providers now that can do that. They've done all the heavy lifting for you, all the connectivity, and it's moving towards that consumption model. I want it turned on now, and I want it for 3 days, and I want it turned off. and you can very quickly and agile, in a very agile way, move that connectivity. But those are still moving more and more out there, and I think it's a case of just looking out there and knowing where to look, rather than just typically trusting your incumbent and trusting what technology they have.
What challenges are your customers talking about, I suppose, as workforces move more and more towards a virtual model, maybe not necessarily being in large centres? For example, I currently work in London. I mentioned to you before we hit record that I'm moving out to Kent. Thankfully, I'm moving into a new build that's got super fast connection, but my brother-in-law lives 5 minutes down the road, and he's a software development lead. They've got terrible connection. So getting on and actually accessing the services as a technology professional is quite difficult for him.
Yeah, and it's horses for courses. Within the UK, we're a very small island, and whether we agree or not, we've got very good telecommunication presence here. So there are many options, and with 4G and 5G not becoming just to play on your phone and watch YouTube, is that these are viable technologies for connectivity. So say for your example yourself, you've got the security to connect back to your estate privately, but if your connectivity is poor, there's a plethora of solutions currently out there, internet-based, generally the quickest and the cheapest for home-based people, but there are technologies out there. 4G and 5G, as I say, is viable technology for that, whereas previously it was just down to playing on your mobile phones. We are seeing a rollout of that, especially with Internet of Things growing more and more.
Well, Neil, it's interesting to hear that there are changes afoot, and it is becoming a little bit more interesting, I suppose, as a space from a glamour point of view, if we'll say that. But thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed this episode of CIO Watercooler TV, please do take a minute to have a look around the website. There's plenty more content.